Welcome to your Route to Wellbeing podcast. I'm Sue Fullergood, and I'm absolutely sure that you deserve to feel great, and it's possible for you to pulse with energy. So if you're not thriving right now, or if there's something that's interrupting your thriving, then maybe this podcast is just what you're looking for. I've tapped into the knowledge base of experts in the 11 domains of well-being. Each of the experts has something that I think is part of the crucial knowledge that you need to be able to really take care of yourself. And so listen in and see if you can get that magical piece of information that's going to make the difference for you. Please feel free to share this with your friends and family, whoever you think may benefit from it. Please push the subscribe button so that you can be alerted when future episodes are available. Thank you for listening. Hi, I'm Sue Fullergood from the Energy Incubator, and I am so excited to have today with me Dr. David Butler, who has made an enormous impression on my life from way back when I first graduated. And I read one of his books. I've read all of his many books. And it really changed the way I thought about things. And it really started to create some new ideas for me. And so he's been one of those gurus for me who've influenced my thinking, and who's also just been a constant source of inspiration. And a few years ago, I was lucky to go to Australia to the NOI conference, which he put together with his amazing team. NOI stands for the Neuro Orthopedic Institute. And that conference was just a real furtherance of all that you'd started developing in my brain. So I'm really grateful to you. And I'm so excited to be able to download some of those ideas from you for my listeners. So without further ado, I'd love to ask you to take the microphone, David, and share with us a little bit about you, whatever you think that the listeners need to know, other than that you are super duper.
Oh gosh, thank you, Sue, and thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm blushing a little bit here, and hello to everybody in South Africa, and thanks for joining in. Yes, well, I'm a physio, I guess. I do teaching and some research, and I'm trying to retire, but I can't let the patients go. So I'm still seeing some patients. I used to be an old backcracker. I used to do a lot of heavy manual work, and I still do some with patients, but I'm more of an educationalist now, because I've been blessed or been able to link into what we call the pain revolution, which is this massive new amount of knowledge that really in the last 20 years has revolutionized how we manage or how we think about people with pain or chronic pain, stress, anxiety, fatigue. So, and I can't quite stop. I don't want to retire because all this lovely new stuff's coming out. And if I had to say one thing, my expectations of outcome with people now is lifting all the time. And I think that's because we're aware of how changeable we humans can be. And also there's some wonderful clinical trials now showing that quality treating can help. And that's essentially knowledge and a combination of movement and environmental change. So I'm still in the game.
Yay that you are. And you haven't given us much insight, so I'm just going to start the ball rolling for that part of the conversation into your amazing illustrious career. I mean, you are a physiotherapist and you're so much more. I know you're an associate professor,
Yes, I'm an associate professor at the university here. So I combine a professional life of research. I have some students. I do a little bit of research myself. I treat patients. I write. I love to write books. I have a particular interest in chronic pain in rural areas. I suspect it's like that in South Africa, but people in rural areas here have more pain than people in the city areas, and they're left out to some degree. Yeah.
Struggle
So
by themselves.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So that's essentially me. I like to go fishing. I like to go walking and wandering around. I like drinking wine. Um, I'm a generally happy chap.
That you are. I remember going for a walk in the forest with you to see the koala bears when I came to South Australia. And yeah, I know you love nature.
Yeah.
So
Well, the project I'm working on now at the moment. I'm particularly interested in gardening and gardening as a therapy, and particularly as a lifestyle change. We've become so disconnected from nature, I believe, and all of the science and the data is showing that there's much we can do or gain from the garden and gardening itself. And as we chat, I might sort of mention a few of these things. So I give talks to sort of rural areas and garden clubs about using this wonderful thing you've got in front of you for your own health.
I love that, because my whole philosophy around well-being is it's so many factors that come together to build the skill of well-being, and we can't expect it to be just one unifaceted. It really is a multifaceted thing. And
So that's so important. And the listeners, I think for me, one of the things that really changed my thinking was when the first brain scans came out of people in pain. And we oldies always used to think that you kind of had a pain area up here that kind of lit up when you're in pain. But the whole brain essentially lights up. People used to say you only use 10% of it, but that's bullshit, if I can swear on your podcast. We use the whole brain, and what that means, it's a very liberating thing, because it means that everything matters in a pain or a fatigue or an anxiety construction. And if everything matters, then there's so many things that you can do for it. So many things you can do for it to begin to unlock it. And I think that's important.
I love that. And I think, unfortunately, so many people today are living lives stuck behind their computer screens, hardly moving, not taking in any of the beautiful sunshine outside, if they're lucky enough to have it, or the fresh air outside, if they're lucky enough to have that. And so they are literally turning themselves into robots. And I just think that's so disastrous for our health. So can you tell us a little bit more around? Yeah, sorry, go for it.
Yes, I've just only read today that 33% of Australians only get into green areas for 2 hours a week. And I was thinking to myself, well, what's happening in places like Hong Kong and in the Netherlands? Yeah.
Shame.
Sorry, I didn't.
It's hard. No, that's exactly. So maybe we just start our conversation there, really. And how do you see health and pain and stress and anxiety? Let's just lump them together for one moment within lifestyle. How can you talk a little bit to that and share your thoughts on what really brings well-being?
Yes, and even just to go back a step, I just want to also say that we can talk about this, but there are these what I call the missed groups out there, and some of the missed groups who we're trying to join into this pain revolution that we'll talk about are, for example, people who've had a stroke. So, for example, 1 in 4 or 5 of us will have a stroke, and 70% of us will have pain, but it is just not accepted. It's swept under the carpet. That's got to change. Young people with pain, the evidence is if you have a problem when you're 13 or 14, you're highly likely to take it into your 20s. We've got to do more for these people. Old people too. Old people are left sort of rattling on drugs and pills in sort of nursing homes, and they're left out of their whole equation. So I'd like to think this discussion is more for this wider group as well, to bring them in.
Absolutely.
And so you asked about lumping things together. And this is really important too, I think, because we would see pain as what we call an output of the body, right? It's not something which goes in. And this is often a hard thing for people to get. If I pinch myself, right, all that's going in is messages saying danger in the thumb. It's up for the brain then to judge everything and work out whether it's worth making pain. So if I pinch myself and I'm laughing or doing something else, it might not hurt. Right? So this is a really, really key thing. And we need to say pain is ultimately in the body, particularly in the brain, but also powerfully affected by the world we live in. Now, we also lump pain as an output of the brain, pain, fatigue, anxiety. All of these feelings are essentially what we call outputs of the brain and the body. They're outputs. And they're essentially protective things. So pain's essentially a protector. Yeah, it helps us through life. It sort of makes us adapt. It makes us change behaviors. It's really a good thing. You don't want to get rid of it completely. But what happens then, people over time have this process where they simply make too much pain, overprotection, and our bodies and brains change. And that overprotection is what we have to sort of draw back for many people. You could say the same for even when you're a bit depressed. The blues are quite useful. You tend to retreat, you sort of store your energy, and it's a good thing. And it's quite protective, but then it gets into more a severe sort of depressive state where it becomes overprotective and you hide away sort of, from society. So we look at these things like pain, fatigue, anxiety. Anxiety, a little bit of anxiety is good. It helps you get revved up and you can do an exam or you can go to an interview. It's good. But too much, when it's turned on, is obviously not helpful at all. So we look at these as outputs of the body and brain, and very, very similar, very, very similar. They're overprotective things, but we also believe we're getting much, much better at being able to unpack the things that are constructing this too much protection. And I'll talk about that, about the DIMS and SIMS later. So I hope that made sense, or some sense, Sue.
That made so much sense. And, I want to share with you right now, sorry, I had a really bad accident. All my listeners will know about that. I've literally fell off the top of a mountain 18 months ago. And it was really fascinating to see how understanding that my body was trying to protect me and understanding the need for that protection was what was going on for me. So it was really interesting to be able to view the responses in my body with lots of fractured bones and damaged organs and what, as my brain knew it needed to protect me until such times it no longer needed to protect me. And when I could see the pain through that lens, it was really, really helpful, and it diminished the threat value of the pain. I didn't feel so worried about it. I knew exactly what it was there for, and I knew it would be transient, and I knew it would pass when the need for it had gone away. And I must say, understanding that has been so useful to me. So I'm really grateful that you're sharing this information. Can you talk more about that protective function of the brain?
Yes, I can talk for ages on the protective function. It is essentially protective. I'll share my own little story here. I a little while ago started to get this pain in my back, and I didn't really know what was happening. It got worse and worse and worse. And finally, I realized I had a nerve root entrapped, my third nerve root, and that gives you pain above the knee. And it got horrendous. I couldn't sleep. I was trying all sorts of pills and drugs and everything. And I have to say the worst thing was I was walking out in the street and I collapsed in the street. My leg was weak. And I have to say that to me was almost worse than the pain, the fact that I was on the ground and old and withered away. But anyway, over time it got better, and I avoided going to see any super specialists. I didn't want any operations or anything, but I kept thinking the things that kept me going are, number one, I realized that this has to change sometime, because pain is like anything in biology, it changes. And we also know that now the immune system comes into play when you have a painful state. And so many things affect the immune system, like what you eat, like what you think, like what you do. All of these things affect the immune system. So I was doing everything I could to make myself immune healthy. And then I was finally thinking, gosh, I know where the nerve comes out of the little outlet hole, the nerve only takes up a third of the space. So give it some time, let the swelling go, give it some time, keep even sort of wriggling the nerve, and the thing will finally give. And it did finally give, and I'm back to normal. But Sue, the thing that really made me reflect is that I thought to myself, I'm not clever. I've just been lucky that I've been given or had access to this information that we're trying to share with so many people out there, because I think tragically people, well, I get obviously terribly depressed or upset, or they sort of rush and have surgery too early or inappropriate surgery, whereas our bodies are remarkable healers in their own right, particularly when it's powered up with knowledge and information and some support.
Absolutely. I mean, that was something that I ran in my mind the whole time after my accident. Is you're a healing machine. You're the healthiest person on the planet with the most extraordinary healing capacity, and this can heal itself. And I do think that, understanding that the body wants to heal itself and it wants to tend back to its great health. With the right support, it's really an important thing to know. And I think often patients and people suffering with pain or anxiety or stress forget that their body is their supporter, and it wants to help them and wants to get them better.
It's so true. It's the word we use here is bioplastic. We are bioplastic, and we can change. Good time here to share some information that from a clinical trial from our colleagues over here that's just been published. They had 400 patients with chronic pain who had either recovered or who had improved, right? And they asked these patients, what were the things that you learned that really helped you the most? So this, for the listeners, is actually to where sort of research is heading. We're looking at the lived experience of patients out there. And it's interesting, I'll tell you the 4 or 5 things that patients thought were helpful. Knowing that pain protects us, right, and can promote healing. So it's a good thing. You don't want to kill it. It's okay. Secondly, that persisting pain overprotects us and prevents recovery. And out of the 400 people, they really liked that. Okay, they get it. I'm making too much pain. How can I wind it back? The third thing was knowing, and we've talked about this already, that many factors influence pain. And that's linked into the brain scan. And the fourth thing was, therefore, there's many ways to reduce pain and retrain the pain system. Many ways. And that could be movement, thought, diet, food, language, a whole range of things that I presume we'll talk about in a moment. And there was a fifth thing, was that change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. We can change. And it's interesting, this is in 400 people who were given a modern treatment of education and guidance to move and, where possible, change the environment. I think it's a powerful study, and really nice to hear what patients think.
Really nice to, and that it made such a difference to them. You know, in South Africa, we have such security problems. And so one of the things that many of us who can afford to do is to put beams in our gardens. And so if anybody should come near our houses, the beams will go off. But sometimes the sensitivity in the beams is set a little bit too low. And so even a dog or a cat or a bird could set it off. And then your sleep gets interrupted every 5 minutes because your alarm keeps on going off. And I think, the beams that we use to keep us safe in our houses is actually a great metaphor for what the brain does around protecting us. Sometimes sensitivity is set just a bit too low, and so anything sets it off.
Anything sets it off, yeah.
It's lovely. And we can put that, change the sensitivity with time and education.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's a beautiful.
I wanted you to talk today, so that we can help people know how to change the sensitivity of their beams. So, so we talk in medical circles about the biopsychosocial model. Can you share with us what you think about that, which basically means the person in the context of their lives and the biology of their bodies and brains in the context of their social situation? Can you share with us how that is relevant to people's health and to the lived experience that they have?
So you beautifully explained it there already. But it's been a fabulous model and is still the dominant model now in the world of pain and pain research. And just as it's actually a horrible word, isn't it? Biopsychosocial. It's hard to get your mouth around it. So, but we're stuck with that. But what it's really done is helped us look at something like pain in terms of these three categories, which are clearly overlink and overlap. So in a pain construction, there will be the biological elements, which could be damage to your body or changes in the nerves in your central nervous system. Then we've got the psychological issues, which is could be fear of movement. It could be being left out of something, or it could be a whole range of psychological things, shame, even disgust, a whole range of things. And then there's the social issues too, which is a bigger thing, and which is where I guess it's also part what society thinks about pain and who's paying for pain treatment. So I used to, when I had thinking sometimes with patients when I was working full time, and you'd have patients coming in and you'd realize, oh, it's the afternoon and the last 6 people have told me the same bloody story. All right. And you realize it's not just a problem with that person, it's a problem in the bigger world. So these three things have actually come together, but they've helped us as we're building up this story to realize many things come and construct a pain experience, a fatigue experience, an anxiety experience. And those things could come from the biological world, the psychological world, and the social world.
And all together.
And all together, yes. And inevitably it will be all together. Absolutely.
So in years gone by, I used to believe I was a lone ranger believing in the mind-body connection, and I felt that everybody thought I was a woo-woo because I believed in that. But nowadays we understand much more intimately that the mind and the body are linked together. But somehow in medicine there seems to still be an aversion to actually accepting that fact.
Yes, this is it's still an aversion. It's changing slowly. When we tell patients stories, we will always engage the brain in the story. I do have to say though, it's become a bit easier to talk about brains, and somebody sort of doesn't think, oh, you're saying it's all in my head. It's become easier. There were people that used to get a bit concerned about that in the past, and that was perhaps because we weren't so good at talking about brain stories, or we didn't have the graphics, or people hadn't been and found something on YouTube or something. So it has got easier to talk about the brain. and talk about the mind, but it is absolutely clear now that we have to talk about it. It's a key part of it. And I think one thing that's helping that is what we call the immune revolution now. So realizing, listeners, that we always used to think it was just nerve cells in your brain, but probably half to 3/4 of your brain are immune cells. And basically your immune system is your big defender. It's a defending sort of a system. So it's up there, working, and it's all little juices and immune systems. Every little nerve, every little synapse or nerve joining has got an immune cell, which kind of looks after it and kind of guides it. But it's a big defender. And it's obviously looking at if there's an infection or something else coming in, and it will react. But it will also react to your thoughts and your feelings and your circumstances. So essentially what you're saying there, the idea of thought is really juice in your brain. And it's become much easier to talk about the importance of thoughts and feelings and emotions as linked into pain experiences. Perhaps if I say that in another way, people used to think thoughts and feelings were something in the ether up here. But no, when you're thinking something, there's a juice in your brain. They're very, very real.
And I think the mindfulness, if you want to call it revolution, has helped people. And my listeners are very used to me talking about mindfulness, paying attention to what those thoughts are. And that does drive you to understand that they are a construct within yourself, and it helps you to pay attention to what those thoughts are, and then obviously to understand them, by looking at them as an observer, to be able to look at those thoughts and realize that they may actually be harmful to you.
That's right. And that's so right. Do it. And we're talking here about something we probably couldn't have spoken about 5 or 6 years ago. So for example, if I was to say, if I have back pain, and I always said, I'm stuffed, all right? So I keep saying, if someone says, how are you? I'm stuffed. Well, when you say I'm stuffed, there's a pattern in the brain of activity, the I'm stuffed pattern. And the more you say it, the more those synapses hook in and put it in deeper and deeper and deeper into the brain. And it's almost, if you see a stuffed teddy bear, you might think I'm stuffed. It becomes so easy to turn on. But this is really at the cusp now of modern thinking about chronic pain management. And I'm so pleased you're into mindfulness, because we're now getting some wonderful science-based, neurologically based strategies to treat this chronic pain. And did you notice I also said treat chronic pain, not manage chronic pain? And that's something I feel we've been able to say in the last 5 or 6 years. We've tried to change our language from manage pain to treat pain. And we can say that based on the basic science of how we know brains change, the plasticity in the brain. And we can also base that on the clinical trials, that if somebody wants to take on some knowledge and get moving and back into life, that recovery for many, but we're careful with that, could be on the cards, improvement on the cards. Pain is a biological thing, like anything. Everything in biology changes. So we're trying to break out of this cop-out sometimes of manage and move on. Let's see if we can change it. Let's see if we can get you doing stuff that doesn't hurt quite as much or bug you as much.
I just love that, because really, especially having had this experience of mine, that powerlessness of feeling like you can't do anything to help yourself, which I certainly felt right at the beginning after my accident, is devastating. And it's so much nicer when you can feel that there's something you can do to help yourself, and that
that's right.
So much of it, you do have agency over it within your own self. Correct. And mind, and that doesn't mean that you don't need help from outside as well, but a lot of that help is helping you help yourself, rather than hand your body to the doctor and the doctor will fix it, but
That's right.
medication will fix it.
Yeah.
So
Yes, that's right. And again, it comes back to the brain scans, and that when you're in pain, there could be 1,000 areas lit up in there, all sorts of things, people things that you weren't even aware might have been contributing to your pain experience, old memories, thoughts, how you're going to manage in 2 weeks. So many things construct a pain experience. Therefore, so many things can actually help it.
And destruct it. Yeah. So I know you talk so much, and I love that, about the pharmacology store within your own brain. Can you share with us some information about that?
Okay, so we have in our brains, this is what I might try to say to somebody or in the group if I can remember it. You have your own drug cabinet in your brain. It's in there between your ears, right in the brain. It's about as big as a walnut. And that's a bit of brain. That's actually your own drug cabinet. Now, the trouble is people don't know much about it. Everyone can name the pain medications they get from the chemist, can't they? Aspirin, Panadol, they'll name them, but they can't name the ones that their own brain makes. And things like your brain can make stuff almost like morphine, serotonin, right? All of these really good chemicals which are actually can suppress impulses coming up. And listeners, the good thing about it is it's available 24/7. You don't need a prescription. It's natural. You can even get it on Christmas Day when nothing else is open. This is your own pain medication cabinet in your brain. And it's powerful. And listeners, you think, how powerful must that be? Because you've all heard stories, South Africa, in the rural environment, for example, people who've been injured in a farm and they say it doesn't hurt. It didn't really hurt at the time. They've had severe injury. Right? This system is really working to protect you. So it's bloody powerful. It loses a lot of its power in the city, unfortunately. But the key things are, the thing that fires it up to make it powerful are what we call SIMs, safety in me. Things like knowledge, understanding, movement, exercise, diet change, all of these power it up. But the things that power it down, they don't give it any power, therefore more pain comes on, fear, anxiety, not knowing, no networks, etc., being told sort of bullshit stuff, a whole range of things. So it's just good to know you've got it. And for those of you who might be changing medication, who might be trying to come down or titrate off some opioids or some pain medications, this is really good to know that you're not left alone. You've still got this powerful system in your brain to take over. And that's powerful news for many.
And that's not just for pain, that's for stress and anxiety.
Absolutely.
As well.
Absolutely. Yes. Anytime I say pain, listeners, you could think of stress, anxiety, depression, all of these feelings, all the feelings that our brains and bodies make.
And I loved what you said about how you can power it up, and almost get more of those chemicals pumping in your brain through exercise, healthy diet, enough sleep,
movement, getting into nature, a whole range of things. And I come back to nature a lot. I only read the other day that 30 minutes of exactly the same exercise inside compared to 30 minutes of the same exercise outside in the green, far better. Blood pressure drops, you feel better, you get more out of it. Again, it's this disconnect from nature that we were chatting about earlier. So I'm saying here that nature, what we call the blue and the green prescriptions, blue meaning get near some water or something if you can, green obviously in the park or a garden, come into play. So they come into play too in powering up this drug cabinet that we all have in our brains.
So now so often it's counterintuitive because you feel sore or anxious or depressed, whatever it is, and so you just want to sort of huddle yourself down and jump into bed and or lie on the couch and watch TV and escape, and actually that's the worst thing you can do. So it's almost like your brain throws up a suggestion which really doesn't help you, instead of throwing up the suggestion of get out and move, or be with people, or get into nature. And so how do we work with that? And what can we do to counter this sort of natural way we harm ourselves, if you like, because we're afraid?
I think that requires a little bit of a dig and a self-reflection from some people. That apathy, I think apathy, I can't be bothered, I'm not going to do that, I'm just going to stay here and roll up in a ball, I'm too painful, whatever. Apathy is often a cover for fear, I think. So that's fear of movement, fear of hurting myself more, fear of pain, fear of the neighbors seeing me sort of hobble. So I think we can help this by trying to what we call unpack the whole problem where we can, and that comes into the DIMS and SIMS. There is also within that, and I bet you've spoken about this with your group many, many times, that most fundamental and most powerful piece of information that we can give people with chronic anxiety, chronic pain, is that your hurts will usually not harm you. That you can be sore, but you can be safe. That you can ache without anguish, as somebody else told me the other day, which I really quite liked. And this is where we have a pain state which is chronic. It's no longer driven by issues in the body. It's driven by memories, thoughts, feelings, a whole range of other issues. So I think that's a key thing. And for some people, it's just tempting. Come on, I want you just to walk. Let's walk 50 meters. Let's give it a go. If it hurts a little bit, that's okay. That's okay. You won't harm it. Just try. See how you go yourself. And it's just, this is slowly working, slowly challenging, getting people into it. Even running's another thing. People in chronic pain never, ever run. But I often use that as a bit of a shock to the system. They say, run? I'm not running, haven't run for 30 years. I got a back pain. I said, I'm only asking you to run to the back of your yard and back 20 meters, or give it a go. But once they do it, oh, I've run. It's a real sort of challenge. So again, I guess I'm saying here, Sue, there's ways to shock the system too a little bit and really make somebody self-reflect.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems like if you could own the fact that there is fear for you of maybe making yourself worse, or of landing up in a wheelchair, or landing up crippled or whatever, then you're less likely to do it. But when you remember that actually the system is overprotective, and there's too much protection going on for you, so you're not going to harm yourself with a little bit of movement. You could put your toe in the water, not necessarily go and run 10 Ks, but just go and run a few steps and see what the outcome is. I always say to people, give it 36 hours. Don't judge it after 1 hour. Let your body enjoy it and see what happens.
Your body absorb it, enjoy it. Yeah. And so on that note, you probably shared this with many of your clients, that there is one image in one of the books that we wrote which gets far, far more attention and support than any others. I've even got it here. It's the Twin Peaks model in Explain Pain. And what that model shows, and I think that's available online quite sort of freely too, what that model shows.
Just listening can actually Google it, the Twin Peaks model, and see the diagram if you're just we're not watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that just shows that when you've had chronic pain, the buffer how safe it is to go into some pain, because you're so well protected, you're never going to really hurt something. It's unless you fall off a cliff or do some of the crazy things that you've done.
Yeah. And I think if people could understand that actually fear makes pain worse, as opposed to movement making pain worse, or fear makes anxiety worse, or depression worse, that would really empower them and put the controls back in their hands.
Absolutely.
I think lots of people aren't even vaguely aware that they do have fear, and that it is fear that's driving them to take this apathetic approach.
Yeah, it's so powerful. We realized this. I've just been involved in a large clinical trial with osteoarthritis of the knee, and one of the major things that stops people exercising is fear that they're going to wear the joint away even more. Right? Fear. So fear of exercise, and that's because this metaphor, the wording of wear and tear, is so powerful out there. Whereas it's totally wrong. We should be saying move and improve, or move and lube it, because the evidence is so strong that if you can calm your whole system down, calm the immune system down with diet, movement, etc., and do a walking program, that actually the cartilage on the knee will actually grow back, and the juice inside the knee will become much sloppier and useful. But it's getting past the education, getting past that thing first. Don't be fearful of it, because you won't wear it away. I can understand why you're fearful, because everyone said you'll wear and tear it, and that's in the past. But no, just think of, let's move it and improve it and give you a guided program to get you back. But yes, fear changes so much of our behaviors and is so critical in so many disorders.
And it all comes back in the end to trusting your body and trusting your own system to be able to heal itself and not need to be cosseted, because we were made to live a long and illustrious life, I think. Well, not everybody gets that blessing, but if we're alive, we're made to be living, not half living.
That's so true. I'm thinking of my gardening group again. I'm going to give a rural talk in a couple of weeks, and before I gave the talk, I was asking around this little town about what people would really want to get out of a talk from someone who's maybe talking about health and gardening and whatever. And I realized one of the things people were fearful. And one of the things they were fearful of going into a nursing home or going into a care. And I realized what a powerful thing we have here. The longer you garden, then there's less chance, or you'll stay away from care much longer. And then I realized so many people are a bit fearful of gardening, again, because they think they'll hurt something, and they'll think there's an apathy in it. So that's what I'm actually trying to change. It's interesting. We change it with story too. Like, one of my favorite stories for elderly people gardening who are just a bit fearful of hurting their back is because they've seen an X-ray and there's flattened discs and more bone. I say, actually, I think you're moving pretty well. Your back is now actually a stable platform. The discs are flat, there's more bone in there, it's a bit stiff, whatever. I reckon you can get out and dig your roses and your zinnias and plant some carrots, because that's actually a stable platform now. And even that we call it a little metaphor shift from something collapsing back to stable platform. I'll go and play bowls on that. I'll go and do something on that.
Which is, it's completely opposite to what so many people are being told by their doctors. Here in South Africa, if you're in the private healthcare system, the minute you have backache or neck ache, you go off for an MRI scan, and as soon as you see a disc bulge, well, that's the cause of the pain, and I met a gentleman in the store the other day, and he said to me, "Well, I've got 2 disc bulges, as a result of a fall." And I said to him, "And when did you have this fall?" And he said, 2 years ago. And I feel so sorry because no one told him that those disc bulges are going to get.
No, it's not his fault.
No,
Yeah,
exactly.
And I'm sure you've shared data like this with your listeners that at the age of 20, something like 30% of people have disc bulges. And the age of 60, we're all sitting here with bulges and whatever, but I'm quite happy. Bulges are quite normal, really. I like a bit of a bulge in the tummy, in the disc.
And there's no evidence that those bulges are causative of pain anyway, because
no, absolutely not. So it's one of the tragedies. I mean, X-rays are fabulous for the right thing, and scans are fabulous for the right thing, but they have come at a cost for people in pain and fatigue states. Yeah. There is some though. There's change happening. I'm well aware of sort of radiology groups who are making a statement after an X-ray finding that these findings need to be taken into account with the age of the patient and normal age-related changes.
Yeah. But I think there is that, once you've seen it on the scan, and I mean, I've even had the experience myself, so I really do relate of seeing my own disc bulges on my own scan and thinking, knowing though I do, I still found them stressful, and I still think about them, when I have a headache or a neck ache.
Completely understand that. Yes, completely understand that. Yes. I should know, I suppose, but I'm the same. And from my back trauma, I had an X-ray. All I wanted to see was that there wasn't something horrible, really horrible in there. I finally succumbed to an X-ray, and my doctor said, "Would you like to see the X-ray?" I said, "No, I don't look at it. I'm happy. I'm going to go out, keep moving, playing golf, walking, fishing, gardening."
Yeah. I just think this is such an important message for us to get out to people, that don't get stuck with your X-rays. Maybe even don't look and don't read, and just believe that you can carry on your life in spite of whatever's going on.
Right. It's normal aging changes. People aren't told about it, but even the normal mental aging changes create fear. Like things like, it's quite normal for a 60-year-old, 65-year-old to walk into a room and think, "Oh, why am I in this room?" To have tip of the tongue issues all the time where words don't come out, and to be forgetful. It's quite nice. We older people usually have crystallized knowledge in a certain area, and sometimes it's a bit hard to multitask. If that goes too far, then it probably needs checking out, but it's actually quite normal. And I find that quite reassuring when I think, "Why did I come into this room?" You get annoyed and you think, "Oh, maybe there's something really horrible happening," but no, just pull back, lessen back, less fear.
Yeah. So there are quite a lot of people in my community who over-exercise. So they've taken this listening to pain and knowing that it's a good thing to the extreme, and they are maybe running ultra marathons and doing 4 days or 8 day cycling events and so on. Can you talk a little bit to the effect of that on the body?
Yeah. It's quite difficult, because for some of those people that might be fabulous. So for example, for the knee, we know that marathoners who train and they have a gentle progression in how they train, actually have more cartilage on their knee than non-marathoners. It doesn't wear off. So for some of these people, if they're training, it could be good. That's what they want. I don't have any problems with that. If you want to get back to marathon running or walking huge sort of distances or whatever, One of my comments though with training is the importance of context and sort of variety, I think's important. That's a training or activity in different places, in different environments, in different contexts, outside, inside, a variety of training, aerobic, anaerobic, upper limb, lower limb, to just see that it's actually spread around all of the areas of it. We use the Goldilocks approach, as many people do with exercise. Good old Goldilocks, you know, what is ideal? Let's not have too much, too hot, too little, but just right in the middle. Too little exercise won't do anything really to change body, change brain, change feeling. Too much can actually overdo it, but it's finding what's right in the middle. Olympic athletes use the Goldilocks sort of principle too, but we also use that for our patients. Find a baseline and work from there. Mind you, some of our patient baselines, when someone is in severe trouble and might have retreated from the world, it could be using imagery, just imagining activity, imagining walking, imagining walking in a safe place first before you're imagining walking in a less sort of dangerous place, to start to build it up. If you imagine an activity, you probably use as much brain, almost as much brain as if you actually do it. So, you know, we can really grade it, I think. So there are some people out there who I just want to say, oh, that repetitive stuff you're doing, that's really fine, but hey, why don't you do it in a different environment or a different place, or make sure you got all the elements of it and that you're progressing correctly. And the other thing, Sue, I like to remind people that exercise is a modern intervention. It's only something we've invented recently, exercise. You think about it, you know, gyms and the like, and because people work in offices too, I guess. In the past, you got all your exercise from hunting, gathering, gardening, lifting, cleaning, moving. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I love that. But, you know, you've taken away, I think, the threat value, you know, saying that actually the knee cartilage loves the training and it doesn't necessarily wear out because you're training, but the variety is king. I think
the variety is the king, yeah.
Yeah. We have, I always think it's amazing. We've tried so hard to make life easy for ourselves. So we, you know, have a washing machine to wash our clothes and a gate remote to open the gate. And then we have to go to the gym to do some exercise because we've taken all the exercise out of our normal life. You know, we go to the wishy-washy to wash our cars instead of doing it ourselves. And so we have to do so little movement in our actual lives that we have to go to the gym to do it instead.
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So one last thing that there are two things I still want to chat to you about, and one of them is window of tolerance, because I think doing a lot of exercise can be much more traumatic to the body if you're also under a lot of mental stress, you know, so that the stressors are cumulative. And a lot of people blame it then on the exercise instead of recognizing it was the context that was causative of the breakdown that occurred. So can you talk about window of tolerance a little bit?
No, I can't think I can offer much to what you've actually said there, Sue. I think you've really summed it up beautifully, succinctly. That, and it's not just exercise; it's any activity that people will quickly blame the activity, what they've done, what the physio said, what the doctor said they want to do. And again, I think it's probably part of this body-mind rejection out there that either their problem hasn't been unpacked enough for them to realize that relationships and food and memories and expectations are contributing to it. We would unpack that in the dim sim, in the protectometer work that we actually do. So that would be one way to unpack it. I've always change still, even though I'm trying to retire, always changing behavior. But I think one of the most useful things I do with people now is to get them to dig into what I call achievement emotions. So no matter what someone's doing in a pathway back to health, whether it's reading something, doing some exercise, doing some activity, so when they've stopped is to reflect on that activity and reflect and try and think, how do they feel about it? Try and get a reading about how they feel. Are they exalted, excited, or angry, upset, or whatever? And then try to work out at that particular time, why are they feeling that particular way? Quite often it'll be a beautiful achievement emotion. To explain that to somebody, I would say, if you've done really well, you'll have an achievement emotion. You'll get a lovely cascade of these lovely chemicals in your brain. It'll make the memory of what you've done even better. So it'll be easier to do that activity the next time. But then for someone who's got a wider view of why they're hurting, which health professionals should be giving, so giving them the psychosocial elements to it, I think that reflection time, no matter what they do, should also incorporate that. But that's quite a skill for people to do. I ask clients to do it at least 20 seconds, half a minute. Come on, give me that. I've told you, I want you to walk around and do this, but after, sit. How did you go? How did you feel? My gardeners are who I might say, I want 10 minutes in the garden, do whatever you like. Okay, come back, say, how do you feel? Oh, I feel bloody terrible. Well, what was it? Oh shit, well, the mother-in-law is staying with me or something else. So that self-reflection, I think, is where you kind of dig out some of these deeper issues.
Yeah, I love that. Self-reflection is key. And, I was treating a lady yesterday who, as many of my listeners, suffers from sexual pain. And
From?
sexual pain.
Yeah.
Vaginismus.
Yeah.
And her response to her sexual pain, long before she went for help, was to say, I'm just going to push through. I'm just going to push through. And she tried that. And of course, the pain crescendoed and got worse and worse until eventually it was impossible to push through any longer. I think at any point, had she been able to use that skill of reflection, she may have been able to say, hang on, this isn't working, and be able to say, what else should I be doing? But I think that, as you rightly say, is a real skill to be able to say, how do I use the information, not to run and hide in my cave, but to actually talk what I'm doing and do something somewhat differently. And I mean, it was devastating to see how she's harmed herself and her relationship and her self-confidence and everything by just keeping on bashing on towards the pain instead of reflecting. Yeah. But it's a difficult thing to do, to be able to reflect like that.
It is a difficult thing to do, but I think it's a skill we health professionals have to pass on, I think, and let someone know how important it is to self-reflect and to have that achievement or non-achievement emotion or thinking of, to get that deeper sort of knowledge of what's happening. Yeah.
I mean, if I'd literally put one thing I really wanted you to say in this talk, it would have been that. So thank you for saying that, because I just think if we're not ever taking a moment to stop and check what's going on, then we leave ourselves so
absolutely
powerless.
And self-reflection is probably the key thing in, well, the movement, we call it here, the self-regulated learning. So we're to help people regulate their own learning. The other thing I didn't say in my sort of background is that there's a world out there that hasn't really been introduced to health, and that's educational psychology. And it's like a big silo, the world of education out there, and it offers so much to health. And the notion of achievement emotions, and that's where that's come from, the world of education. The world of changing people's beliefs, it's not easy, is it? Sue, but the key thing is when somebody is, it's easy to change youngsters in the school. They've got more of a blank slate. But you and I see, and your listeners too, when you go to a health professional, you've come with your own ideas and conceptions and misconceptions, and you've got this well-built system in your brain of what you think is right. And sometimes when we suggest something simple like, well, maybe your pain isn't all to do with your back, but maybe it's to do with your brain and some of your feelings and some of the thoughts. We understand that that's not easy.
It's not easy to take on board. I mean,
No.
I even find my own beliefs hard to change. So, you know, knowing this is, yeah.
Yep.
I could stand and talk to you all day, and I'm so glad you can't retire, because I really don't think the world can afford to let you go. But have you got any little nuggets that you'd love to leave with the listeners? I know you've given many. But any passing?
Yeah, there's many. I just, from our world of research and clinic and knowledge of brain change and whatever, I just think there's so much more hope out there if you can get access to it. I find myself with clients, giving them hope in someone who might have had something for 5, 10, 20 years. And it's a realistic hope now. I think there's enormous bioplasticity, we call it, or the potential for change, which is within us all. With just a little bit of help, a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of guidance, we can really make that far more powerful. I think for older people too, who are listening, that you don't have to slow down or stop just because you're old. Because you're old doesn't mean you'll have more pain. In fact, older people have less pain than a lot of younger people. So pain isn't a sentence to say, oh, I'm old, I've got pain, I'm going to have it forever. No. You can live a very, very happy, pain-free older life as well too. I could go on and on, but I get a bit excited here. But I think it probably comes down to I'm excited about the world of pain anxiety treatment. My colleagues are in research and in the clinic, and I just hope some of that excitement comes over to your listeners too.
It certainly does. And what I just find so amazing about you, David, is that you are able to take the complex constructs that you've researched and your infinite understanding of the complex nervous system and make it simple so that people can actually use it in their lives. So it's just such a skill and talent. And thank you for doing that, so that people can tweak the way they live their lives and feel great.
The way they live their life. Thank you, Sue. Great to be here. Great to talk.
How can people get hold of you if they want to find your books?
I'm retired, remember. I'm retired. But for people, there's a couple of things that might help, particularly people in rural areas. The Pain Revolution movement here has a lot of fact sheets and things. That's painrevolution.org. That's run by my colleague Lorimer Mosley, and a number here where we travel around the country and talk to people in rural towns. So painrevolution.org is probably one of the best things. I always say to people, be very careful what you read online. And it's probably best to look at websites that have .org or .gov at the end of it. I think there's a lot of misconception out there. But I think to sum up some of the things I've said, I think that what you'll find on painrevolution.org would be particularly helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, David. And hopefully we can have another conversation again in the future and hear what's going on for you as you enjoy your retirement.
Good on you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thank you, South Africa.
Please push the subscribe button so that you can be alerted when future episodes are available. Thank you for listening.